Welcome back to Combat Coffee Club. We're here, 786 Sports. It was another phenomenal weekend in combat sports. One of those weekends that just you appreciate as a fan. I'm almost happy that we started this sports network and this platform, Combat Coffee Club, just so I could talk about weekends like this, so I can get all my thoughts out. Because it was not only obviously Canelo versus Crawford, historic fight on Netflix, but it was Noche UFC for Mexican Independence Day. And also we had BKFC, Yoel Romero. We had a little bit of boxing in Great Britain. And we also had even, I think, Gable Stevenson debuting in the LFA. So from all across the spectrum, we had amateur fights, pro fights, and the big fights. So we're going to cover a lot today. Obviously, we'll start with the big fight from the weekend, Canelo versus Crawford. Terence Crawford beats Canelo via unanimous decision, 12 rounds. It had the big fight energy. I feel like this was one of those, we always talk about those pivotal moments. I think it was one of those pivotal moments for boxing where the two GOATs of this era face off against each other. And we went 12 rounds. And surprisingly, at least to me, I got to be honest, I felt like I had Terence in the beginning, but then I backed out and went for Canelo because, Canelo's the GOAT. He's just proven time and time again that he's one of the greatest, and Crawford was going up 3 weight classes. So the odds were stacked against him, but this dude proved that he's one of the greats, if not the greatest of this era, as everyone was saying after Saturday. Because, I mean, he completely he didn't shut down Canelo, but Canelo couldn't figure him out. And it was like a masterclass of boxing. Just it almost made Canelo look like that wasn't his 20th title fight. Like, he gave him that much of trouble, that it was amazing to watch. Just the performance he had, the technical aspect of it. He's traditionally really loves switch hitting, but he didn't have to do much of that for Canelo. He stayed in the pocket. He stayed his stance, which a lot of people thought, Canelo being the bigger man, the aggressor, he was going to have to work more his counters, but he traded with him. He stayed in the pocket. He gave him combos like Canelo. That there is that beautiful sequence or picture of him hitting Canelo and Canelo turning his face like, what the fuck am I doing here? So it was overall just a great fight. But there's things that I loved about it and things that I didn't so much like about it. And obviously, two great boxers fighting, you're just nitpicking at this point. But it was, I wouldn't say the coming out party for Zuffa Boxing and Riyadh Season and Turkey putting together this boxing event, the TKO group, which also owns WWE and the UFC, which you saw a massive, massive overlap of all the sports, entertainment, combat sports come together this weekend, which was super dope to see. But there was some things that I thought were interesting that I just wanted to point out. Like, well, first off, we were just talking about it. They had Netflix just came out, 41 million viewership for Canelo Crawford. Tyson and Jake Paul was 121 million, which that's a crazy drop off when you think about it. But I mean, obviously it's Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, polarizing figure. But it's crazy because these are two of the best boxers in the sport. But yet Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, more of an exhibition fight, got more viewership. So it kind of says a lot of kind of the boxing landscape where you're getting these real fights, but then you're also just still getting these one-off, I don't want to say celebrity fights, but they're more spectacles that get the eyes tuning in. But the one thing that I did like, it did feel, like I said, it had that big fight energy the whole weekend. All the presser, every media member was there. Shannon Sharp, Stephen A. Like, everyone was covering it. Dana White did like the most media I've seen in a long time. He was pushing it heavily this weekend. But the one thing is that I was expecting it to be, because Dana White was involved, I was expecting it to be a little more on the UFC production side, where boxing is kind of known for its pacing is very slow. Like, I was thinking, oh, this fight starts at 9. I'll be in bed by 11, 12 latest. But nah, it was only 4 fights, the main card, and man, it took the pacing. Just I don't know what it was. I'm sure Dana White was trying to change that, but obviously it's not fully his show. But the main event, it just like took so long to get to, and then you're almost like anticipating this main event. It's like another 30 minutes, another 20 minutes, and you have like 4 performances before the main event, the walkouts, and then you finally get to the main event. And this is the thing that I know boxing purists always kind of tend to disagree, but this is why it makes the UFC so special. It's that you have two of the greatest boxers to ever do it, but you're gonna go 12 rounds, and after the 6th or 7th round, you're like, okay, you don't have that sense of surprise that you watch in the UFC, where one guy could be winning for 4 rounds, and the 5th round you're still on edge because you don't know what could happen. You don't know if they're gonna get fatigued and someone's gonna catch a choke or a knee or a spinning elbow. But I'm watching Terence Crawford and Canelo Álvarez, two of the best, but I'm just like, I already know what's gonna happen. And then after like the 8th or 9th or 10th round, you already see Crawford kind of running away with it. Maybe Canelo has some success, and then the only surprise is that maybe at the end the judges, notoriously in boxing, could give it to Canelo, and you're just like, whoa, where did that come from? But essentially, you kind of know where the fight's going. So it was interesting to me that on the other side, right before the main card of the Canelo Crawford match started, you had Noche UFC with Diego Lopez and John Silva, and it's like that was if you're a casual and you're watching either or sport, you watch UFC, you're having more fun watching the UFC, and you have no idea. I'm sure you guys didn't know who John Silva was before this weekend at all, but you knew Canelo and Crawford.
A little because of the Combat Coffee Club.
Shout out. But to my point, you could tune in, watch this, and be like, yo, this was crazy. Like spinning elbow. They were going back and forth for 2 rounds. Diego Lopez finishes it off. The energy, everything. And you see them at the end, like you see the before and after image of them, and they're like bloody, just went to war. And obviously, don't get me wrong, Canelo and Crawford, they're badass warriors, but you just see the difference in the sport that I feel like this weekend was like the perfect juxtaposition where these guys, Diego Lopez and John Silva, they're stars, but they're not nowhere near the level of Canelo and Crawford. And then you see Canelo and Crawford that are massive stars, but you could see kind of after the fight, people were like, okay, this was an amazing performance, but it just left you like, it's not just a sport. I feel like it's a combination of things, which I'm interested in seeing. Maybe this was a learning experience for Dana White and the Zuffa Boxing and the guys from Saudi Arabia of how these shows are going to move going forward, because I feel like they were talking a lot about it prior to the event of we're going to change boxing, we're going to change the pacing, we're going to change how the production is done, but you kind of saw the same traditional product. And I know Dana White's trying to compete. He's trying to compete with the big boys of DAZN and Eddie Hearn and all these guys. So I'm interested to see the business of combat sports after this weekend, because I think it was like a major shift and a major like, okay, there's things that are now going to come from this fight. And you're already seeing like, I mean, just this weekend you saw there's already big fights going on in Saudi Arabia. Then you see they locked in WrestleMania 2027, Saudi Arabia. I saw yesterday that they're going to do a flag football tournament in Saudi Arabia with Tom Brady and other huge names. Like, these guys are pouring in money to do these huge events. So it's going to be interesting to see like how this progresses with the TKO group specifically owning WWE, UFC, and now a part of boxing. But yeah, man, it was a dope event. Like I said, there was things I liked and things I didn't like. One thing I love though that I gotta shout out is our boy John Anik from the UFC, the play-by-play, the announcer for the UFC. He was part of the analyst group for the boxing match. So it was John Anik, Max Kellerman, the boxing GOAT, and what's his name? Ward. Andre Ward, thank you. But man, he like killed it, bro. I feel like he transitioned so perfect into that broadcast team, and it was kind of like one of those like, oh, it's one of our guys in there, and he was just like, man, I really enjoyed his commentary and all those guys together. It felt like a big deal having them all three together like that. I really like the walkouts besides the performances. The performances were a little odd. Like,
That fell flat a little bit.
yeah, it was like, why you have Tool opening up real quick for the Mexican mariachi band during Mexican Independence Weekend, and then it just dragged on, man. You just wanted to see these guys come out. But I did like the walkouts. I hope the UFC implements something like that where it's a little more exciting, where they have like those LEDs on the floor. You see their names going across. Maybe for the main events of UFCs, they could do something like that. It wasn't too over the top, like fireworks and all this stuff, but it was like subtle enough where you felt like it was a big deal.
You see it in the WWE events that we cover. Like the entrance is really like a focused on thing. Always like obviously
huge.
Stone Cold and the Undertaker with the music, but like the music, the visual, the light can really elevate like way more than the song could on its own, which is what boxing kind of depends on.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like wrestling that's part of the sport. That's part of the entertainment. So it's always going to be infused, but boxing almost goes a little too much. And then UFC traditionally doesn't like any of that. Dana White doesn't really like performances and like pyrotechnic and like all these things. But I feel like there's a way to just maybe like a perfect example is like when Conor fought Khabib, I believe, or maybe it was the one before, but where they totally changed up his entrance. They dimmed the lights. They put green smoke. It gave it that vibe of like, oh shit, like something special is about to go on here, and it kind of differentiates it from the other fights on the card. But I think those little things, man, like because I hope that with this new endeavor or new boxing product that they're trying to put out, that they don't like abandon the UFC a little bit, or like, oh, we got that under control. Like, let's just keep that, well-oiled machine. But, I mean, they have the White House card coming up, so I think they're going to be paying a lot of attention to that.
I think the lights are a big one. Like, if you've been to any good baseball game and a good closer comes into the game, like this happens with Edwin Diaz. It happens now with Joan Duran in Philly, where the lights go out. The Undertaker, bell rings, but the lights are off. And then the LEDs do like provide the only lighting that there is, and it's electric. It gets everybody's attention. It calms everything down to one moment, and then the spotlight hits the one the one player, which what they could do here easily.
No, and I feel like this day and age, you have to start doing all that stuff in almost all sports. Like, you have to stand out from other leagues, stand out, and also that stuff translates to social media.
For sure.
So like those videos and those reels and that content that you're able to put out after that, it could get new fans into the sport, but it's just a part of like the times we live in. Like, you can't just have a walkout and the guy jogs to the ring and then fight starts. Like, you gotta give it that big fight energy, that big game energy. Like, I think that clip you showed me of the pitcher walking out that you're just talking about, like, bro, like, I've never been excited for a pitcher. I could care less.
And it's not dependent on like you having whatever celebrity walking next to you. Like even when we watched the Poirier fight, like Lil Wayne being there, it's not about Lil Wayne in that moment. It's about the fighter, and it's about elevating the fighter itself. That's why I say WWE, because all the focus goes on whoever's entering there. And I agree. I don't think the pyrotechnic, I don't think it should be taken to some extreme, but there's a balance there of paying a little more attention to it. Can I comment on the Netflix thing?
Oh, yeah.
How much easier it was to watch versus a lot of the other, even using ESPN and ESPN Plus, like having it be on Netflix was such a seamless, like it got me to watch 3 out of the 4 or however many fights were on the card. Some of those earlier ones were really good too. The Martinez and I'm forgetting his name.
Almost stole the show a little bit.
That one was really good. And then I liked the one right before, or the one right before the main card. King Callum.
Yeah, from Ireland.
Yeah, that one was a good fight. I really enjoyed that too. But I think to your point about the pacing, it is interesting having now been more watching the UFC side of things, being engaged on it, feeling like that's more in touch with the way sports operates now. And watching the boxing made me feel like, damn, dude, 10, 12 rounds. This feels like something we decided in like 1930 and have just kind of modified very slightly since then. So I think it feels boxing is due for, I don't know what the answer is, but some like shortening because the main card didn't come on until like really late, but also the spacing between the fights and the main action. And then there was just, you watch a UFC fight, you know it could end at any moment.
Yeah.
I didn't get that sense watching any of these
all.
matches. I got the sense these guys could just wear punches all day.
Yeah, it's only when you like watch heavyweights, maybe you get that feeling like, ooh,
Yeah.
one punch can put him away or whatever. But that's the weird thing. It's not weird. It's just that's boxing. But like you could, like one of them could have got knocked down, but then you get a 10 count, and then okay, get back up. Let's see if you still got fight in you. In the UFC, if you get caught and you get knocked down, the guy goes on top of you, it could be over.
Yeah.
There's no like, all right, get back up and then count that as a knockdown, which
Right.
I get it. That's part of the traditional sport. But that's why even if there's no, you don't have that like adrenaline, or at least when I watch fights, I'm like, oh shit, he got caught. Like even when a boxer gets knocked down, at least if it's like in the second, third, fourth round, you're like, okay, damn, he got knocked down, but he's still there.
What I hope we do see is more overlap from the boxing world into UFC. So seeing like, I feel like we watch a lot of cards. We don't really talk about the boxing skills of the guys on the card. We talk about the well-rounded, the jiu-jitsu, the takedowns, the grappling and all that. That gets more focused than like a guy who just goes up there throwing hands, but is good at it. Holloway stands out a little bit, but Holloway's a little more.
Topuria, which there's rumblings of Topuria and Crawford, but you know, that's it's funny because if you see Topuria, his boxing is like the highest of level, but then what do you do against someone that all they've done their whole life is boxing, and then you can't bring Crawford into the octagon
right.
because he'll get, it's like crazy the difference of like if you step into the ring, you might have a chance, but he's been doing it his whole life. If you step into the octagon, he has zero chance with Topuria, someone like Topuria. But I think the cool thing about what we're starting to see now is that like there is that crossover of UFC and boxing because they're just, everything's so intertwined now. Like even when you're watching this huge boxing card, you're still seeing MMA people, Dana White, everyone's commenting on it. Oh, I could beat Crawford. Oh, I could beat Canelo. Like it's all intertwined, and like the lines get blurry. It's like you do wonder, like, damn, can Topuria stand with Crawford? But if you look at it on paper, you're like, oh, he can't. But then there's always a puncher's chance.
What that tells me is that there will always be a space for boxing. Like people want to show up and go see a good like two guys stand up, not taking each other, just like boxing. That has a space. But what I'm seeing is like both can coexist at higher levels together and still feed off each other in the ways that you just mentioned. You know, so it's not really like, to me, it's not boxing is dead at all. Actually, you saw that even quote unquote the celebrity match, people still want to watch that dynamic. And UFC seems more right now more of like a true total combat sports, but boxing has a space and a place. So it's really like, I don't look at it as like, okay, you know, UFC gets this and boxing gets this. It's like, damn, combat sports gets all of this. Plus WWE. That's why, shout out Combat Coffee Club.
No,
it's almost like the visions coming together
dude,
as to why the platform was created.
Dude, it's almost like, besides, because when I'm here, I'm a passionate MMA fan, so I'm always like leaning towards the UFC. But right now, like you said, combat sports in general, those three specifically, boxing, UFC, and WWE are like at its peak. And also because what we're saying, like there's never been a time where all three were like this popular, but also in some weird way working together directly or indirectly, or one entity that owns a part of two or three of these organizations. So it's like it's cool. Like you go to the fight this weekend on Netflix, and there's Triple H with Stephanie McMahon, but then there's like a bunch of UFC fighters, but then there's celebrities, there's influencers. It's like it overlaps everywhere. So
Combat Coffee World, the collective Combat Coffee verse.
Yeah, bro. So it's like like I said in the beginning, like these type of weekends where you get a little bit of everything, it's the best, bro. And I think Saturday, besides the pacing of the boxing match, like at least I feel like Dana White wanted to make sure like it was almost perfect where the UFC ended right as the main card started. So that was their idea, that like we're not competing.
Oh wow, they were working in sync.
Yeah, that like they wanted it to flow perfectly. So you watch on ESPN, and then once you're done, boom, Netflix. And to your point, the Netflix is like you almost feel like you watched it for free, because at this point you feel like you've had Netflix for so long, you pay for it, but like
You did, but you didn't.
but you didn't, and like you get
That's the
like yeah, that's why now pay-per-view model seems so silly, because
That seems outdated.
like you just turn on your streaming and literally click it, and you could go back and like it's seamless.
It really is. Jay, what you got?
Specifically talking about boxing, I think that we see it across the board. There's such a thirst for nostalgia, and in everything that we do as far as content is concerned. And I think boxing fits right into that. Like, it's so nostalgic. You hear about all these, like, you know, big time fights when we were growing up, or obviously even before us. And you know, my dad always talks about the big fights when he was growing up. So I think like it just hits that chord of the thirst right now of where the population is at, and people are just like thirsty for nostalgic content.
No,
you know?
100%. And I think that's why this fight was so important, that it gave it that like those Tyson fights, those Hagler fights, those Ali fights. It was like, oh, these two like goats of the generation, Pacquiao, Mayweather. Like, it was that type of fight where you got that like nostalgia feel of like, yo, everyone's tuning in for this. But to me, boxing is like, it's an institution. It's like it kind of reminds me of baseball a little bit, where it's like it's just been around for so long, and it's so like the rules pretty much have never changed, and it's just like set in stone. But that's what also makes it great. But what also, to your point, like maybe there's something they could keep tweaking at to make it better.
Baseball has instant replay. It's been around forever, but it's got instant replay. It's got like, it's gonna have automatic balls and strikes. There's evolutions that the sport can take that are not. It's the nostalgic dose, because I agree with that so much, because I felt that watching the. Damn, I can't believe I'm blanking on this guy's name. The Mexican American fighter. His son was on the card, but his dad was his trainer.
Oh, he was in the first fight, right?
Yeah. I'm blanking on his name right now, but I remember watching him growing up, and that haircut that he had with the two, like, shaved head with the two bangs to the
Chavez?
side. No, they did. Anyway, we'll edit this part out, but.
Sorry. Baseball's going through that right now too. We've talked about it, like the resurgence of baseball and the popularity, and I think it's that people are kind of coming back to that nostalgia. And although baseball has evolved, to your point, and instant replay, all this type of stuff, like, it's still that feeling, man. Especially when you get into postseason in baseball, there's nothing better. So yeah, I think boxing has the chance to kind of have a big revival here. And if anybody's gonna do it like Dana and that group is gonna be able to do it.
Yeah. I think a lot of us grew up around like events centered around the boxing matches. Like, I grew up on De La Hoya, Trinidad, and like Tyson, and you talk about Hearns Hagler, the Roy Jones era. Like, my family, especially my dad, during a certain pocket of time, Julio Cesar Chavez was all scattered all through my childhood. So like, I think you're right. There's a big dose of nostalgia. And so that's why I think it will always have a place, but now it has a place next to this other, I think, more advanced entity in the UFC. I think they're just they're in a position to be more nimble and more aggressive. And because they came up in this era, they're not tied to the things, the ways of doing things before. Because if you did things the way the UFC first did them, they were like barefoot, like bare knuckle, and just like wild, just crazy,
Wild West,
crazy stuff. So like they're like more nimble to make adjustments. I think that's why they're more of like the relevant entity right now.
They're still so young, like 1993. Like they're always constantly evolving, like you said. So yeah, but I mean overall, I think, like we're saying, the combat sports is just at a great place. And I mean, like, these guys are making millions and millions, and everyone involved is making millions. So we're just always comparing apples to oranges with the UFC and boxing, but don't get it twisted. Like, they're both doing amazing right now,
and they're both super global.
Mm-hmm.
But UFC, that to me has like I think it has the crown. Maybe soccer is probably, football is the most globalized sport, but UFC has really like the range of fighters from all over the world. We talked about this on one of the last ones where, Dagestan and the fighters from Eastern Russia, like from that Russian bloc, the
and
former
they
Soviet
get behind
countries.
their fighters, like
Right.
Russia, Brazil, like all these places. They get behind their fighters, where like you might know someone, one of these Russian fighters. Mexico, huge. Diego Lopez. Like Hamza has like an army. Like when he posts something, it's like tens of 20s of 30s of thousand comments, millions of engagement. Like
We forget how big the world is.
yeah, it's like sometimes we think we're just watching it on our
Yeah.
TV, but it's like it spans across the globe.
Right. And boxing has that too. So I'm watching an Irish fighter, a Mexican American fighter, a fighter from Africa on one of the cards, and from all over the place in the U.S. too. So it feels like it's still alive, and it should be. I think it'll always have a place. But the juxtaposition of that and UFC next to each other, especially when Diego Lopez is a spinning back elbow to end the fight, and then what you said about the visual after.
Dude.
Two guys look like they just went to war. The other guys like are gonna go
Chilling.
home and sleep kind of good
Yeah,
tonight.
they had
you
a
know?
good training session, a good
Right.
sparring session, but these guys like one almost died basically.
Yeah.
And another spinning elbow, like that's a whole other thing. The last time we were here, we talked about 2 spinning elbows, and it's like he literally caught him. He was overly aggressive, and boom, dropped him. And now, but that's a cool thing too. Like now he's right back in the title picture. Maybe he gets a rematch with Volkanovski, you know, or maybe he needs one more. But it's like even that in itself is like, damn, does he get a rematch or does he need one more? Fuck it, I'll take one more. You know, there's no like, okay, now what? Let's get another big title fight. Well, maybe Crawford waits another year or two for a Canelo rematch, or they pin him up against somebody else in another weight division so he can get like a 4th belt. With the UFC, is like, all right, what's next? And just the last time we were here, like we thought the Leon Murphy with the spinning elbow might get the match, but just like that, another fight happens, and you're talking about who's gonna fight for the title now. Whereas in boxing, it's like you kind of already know. It's like, all right, let's sit back and see what we can do. With the UFC, this might change next week.
Did you see how many things they put on Crawford after the fight? How many belts and rings and like shit? Like, so he's like holding these titles for a long amount of time, where in UFC you're seeing a higher turnover and more like challenges of that. I think that's correct. I also think that the commentary, like Kellerman itself, like Kellerman being in it was nostalgic in and of itself. But I also think he said something right before the fight that was really, I didn't know this, and it educated me a lot on Crawford overall. It's like he has this undisputed record, but in his memory, he can't remember a fighter having this much on the line in terms of legacy. Like he could win this fight, right? Like winning this fight and losing this fight had such different legacy outcomes for Crawford. Like if he lost the fight, you'd call him like it's not known if he's going to fight again, right? So like where does his legacy go? But if he wins the fight, it changes it altogether to a greatest of all time discussion. And like I thought it was really interesting pointing out that thing, and then having Crawford do what he did in it. Like basically, biggest moment, your entire legacy is like based on this, and you schooled one of the greatest of all time.
No, and there was a clip that before the fight, basically Canelo was saying like all you fought is nobodies, and like now you're fighting the greatest and a real fighter, and he's like, all right, well you're just gonna be another nobody then.
Wow.
Because I'm gonna beat you, and it's exactly that. Like obviously he's a great fighter, one of the greatest to do it, but you always like, especially in boxing, it's like padded records. Like his first 20 fights, you don't know who he even fought. So it's always like, yeah, but who did he fight? Like what was those names? But like literally in one fight, you don't even need to know the rest of his record, the rest of his resume. It's like he beat Canelo at his prime, basically.
And he made Canelo ineffective in what Canelo is best at, is what it seemed. Like he kind of boxed him out of everywhere he could have used his strength. And then when it was time for Canelo to, that hold out for the big punch and the big swing, because he doesn't jab very much.
Yeah.
But like Crawford just never let him in there. And there were a couple of times where he wore a punch, and they were saying it in the commentary. And it was like, oh, that was going to be the question. How does he take that? How does he take those shots from Canelo? And took it smiling and dipped out of it and gave 2 or 3 of his own before getting out.
And the cool part about him doing that is that like visually, it's like sometimes you see boxing or a fight and you're like, oh, this guy's like outclassing him or he's picking him apart. But you could visually see Canelo like, bro, what? Like, I can't figure this out, or like just the frustration, or just
visibly
like,
frustrated for sure.
Visibly frustrated, visibly like, yo, I'm here, and then he's 2 steps ahead of me. I thought I had this, he had that. So like to see a fighter like Canelo have that, like show his cards, like not have that poker face during like one of the biggest fights of his career, it was like, oh, this guy really like shook him a little bit. So I mean, yeah, that was another thing that it was cool to see, where you never see Canelo uncomfortable, because but that goes back to like his last couple of fights. Who did he fight? You know, it was kind of one sided. So it was interesting to see him like looking like an underdog. Insane.
Great card overall, though. I thought I felt like I was watching two of the best in the game, and it wasn't like, it made sense that nobody's going to be inflicting this crazy damage because both are such skilled fighters in their own way. And I thought like it blew my mind that Canelo has been who he's been without really utilizing a jab. He just kind of boxes in there, gets in there with good footwork. He does a lot more than that, but like it's interesting to have been this good for this long without really working off your jab. Where you saw it with Crawford was working off the jab. I thought that was more effective, but I can see like, hey, these are two of like the best fighters of our generation going.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like I said, there was a UFC and a boxing in the same night, so we're talking about it, but it was all super. I mean, I wish it was always like that every weekend, where like you get like this crazy, you don't know what's gonna happen, knockout, spinning elbow, choke out, guillotine, and then you see two of the best fight for 12 rounds, and just like beautiful, the sweet science, like no knockout, no, oh, this guy didn't make it the full fight. Like no, they went 12 rounds, and I mean Crawford won obviously, but it was like nice to see a full fight of two great boxers. So.
It did make me feel a little bit like, putting it next to the UFC, the amount of rounds. Like that to me is what's put into focus here. If we're like kind of putting these two things next to each other, and it's the amount of rounds for the reasons of like you as a fighter calculating where you need to be in the 8th, the 9th, and like where you are in the score, how many rounds ahead versus how many, whereas it's different watching the UFC fight. Right, like there isn't that kind of calculation. There's more a calculation of how do I get through this round.
Yeah.
And so everything is like kind of on the line more often. Whereas in boxing, you can just kind of like, I don't want to say hide, but you could clinch. You could kind of chew up some time.
You could take a round off.
You could take or you can do things to, like, okay, I'll concede this round.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm playing the bigger game.
And you're not in too much danger.
Right. So like the danger, to your point, isn't always like as present. Whereas in a UFC fight, it feels like you got to be on your toes the whole time, because you can get put to sleep or you can get caught with one and, then get like stomped on.
Yeah. And also it's different from round to round. Like we saw with Kamza and DDP, like if you're being controlled and laid on top of for 5 full minutes, it's different than like being pieced up standing up. It's a different type of tired. It's a different type of exhaustion. So you can't account for. I'm sure he wasn't thinking the next round the guy's gonna do the same exact thing to me for 4 rounds. He was like, all right, let me stand this up, let me do my thing. But you can't plan for what you don't know is gonna happen. With boxing, you guys are gonna be on your feet with 2 hands up, so you can to your point, you can kind of take rounds off or plan accordingly or like concede. In UFC, you can't at all. And you don't know what the other guy's going to do. It's all disciplines.
Damn, I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah, that you can have a game plan, but you not really. The game plan is just what you and your team know, like, okay, this guy has tendencies to do this. Oh, he's more of this type of style fighter. When he goes left, he does this, that, but then a spinning elbow happens. It's like, it doesn't matter. But that's why I just love fighting, man. And I mean, we even had shout out Yoel Romero, dude. I mean, BKFC debut, no gloves, 48 years old, looked like a freaking specimen out there, jacked. I don't know what kind of testing they do at BKFC, but shout out. But he won, man. He won his debut, and that's another thing. Like, he's a wrestler, and he stood up with no gloves, no kicks, no submissions, no nothing, and he knocked the guy out.
Can you imagine facing that guy in a bare knuckle scenario and he looks like that?
Scary, bro.
Just knowing, like, I keep thinking about those Joe Rogan clips where he talks about Yoel Romero and like his bones. It's like a living Wolverine basically, and you're gonna face that guy in bare knuckle.
Oh,
did you see that? I haven't seen the clips of that yet.
Oh yeah, bro. But even him in the weigh-ins, you see the comments. Everyone's like, "Where did they make this guy?" Like, what? He's 48, bro, and he looks incredible, man. He looks almost in better shape because he's not cutting weight than he did in the UFC, which that's insane at 48 years old, a Cuban wrestler.
And that back to the globalization of the sport or combat sports overall. But like, obviously he came up in the UFC and made a name for himself really in the UFC, but like in Cuba, and Cuba has a rich boxing tradition too. So like the universality of the combat sport. And I think that's what you're plugging into. That's what we're plugging into here. And I don't think that's going anywhere. That's only going in one direction, especially with just more emphasis clearly on the promotion and the working off of each other, doing like an in-sync schedule with the UFC fights, and then also making it available on Netflix. Like this to me is kind of the model moving forward for certain weekends. And in the middle of football, opening football season too, like the attention should be kind of elsewhere, but it got all the attention.
Dude, and I know they're gonna do more of that moving forward. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it's Canada, but they're almost now announcing things in tandem where it's like WWE event on Friday, or I'm sorry, UFC event on Saturday, WWE event on Sunday, but it's a whole weekend in the same arena or the same city, but they're coming in as a force, and like now they're capturing an audience for a whole weekend, and they're promoting it together with like both their entities.
Did it catch anybody else's attention or your attention, the stuff going on ringside, where like to the point of the pacing of boxing, there was so much happening like in the back of the fighters, and even to the point where what stood out to me the most, and this is not throwing shade, this is like seeing Dana White be on his phone. Obviously he's the busiest guy in the world on that night. He has a UFC event going, there's a lot going, but it speaks to like you can kind of stop paying attention to boxing for a little bit, and Jason Statham can have a conversation with Mr. Beast like the whole way through, and then a family could come take pictures, and you're just, everybody's blocked trying to like look around, but it just felt like I don't see that everybody's like, you're locked in the UFC. Like you're not going to stand in front of a guy and like the things casually going on in the background. That really stood out to me.
It's actually interesting you said that, because when you watch a UFC and Dana White's ringside, he's locked into the monitor or the fight. And obviously there's things going on, but he's like locked in. Obviously it's also his event going on. Right. He's way more involved in. So he's like working. But yeah, a boxing match, you can kind of, like you said, like just like the fighters, you can kind of like, oh, like I'm not going to miss anything. I mean, you could miss a knockdown, but not even, because like they give him time. So he gets back up. And so, yeah, that is an interesting point. And you could even tell that Dana, a lot of people are like speculating that he was like disinterested because it's not his. Like like maybe he might have over promised things because he thought that he was gonna have more control, but it seemed like it wasn't his baby this weekend. It was more of like the other entities at play that maybe he couldn't execute all the things he wanted to.
It's almost like a licensing deal, right? Like the sport of boxing is like using Dana in like a licensing capacity. Now, I'm sure he did a lot of active promotion and things like that, but he's also running a full other card.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Simultaneously working in sync with each other.
But that just goes to show you he didn't even have to be, because the UFC was in San Antonio.
Talk about scalability. Sheesh. You know, like to be able to do that while your like attention is focused elsewhere, and you're diversifying with like just another like massive revenue stream, because that's what, like, this was well funded. This was at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, like full stadium, packed house.
But that's what makes it so interesting, is because it's not only Dana White, like one of the greatest promoters of our time, but it's these guys from Saudi Arabia, Turkey, al-Ashish, that have unlimited funding, unlimited supply of capital, and they just want to build this boxing to be like the biggest thing again. So that's a deadly combination. Plus TKO Group, plus WWE, plus, like, you know, all these entities coming together with all this funding. I mean, they're gonna make some noise. You know, they're gonna disrupt the boxing. It's just, are they gonna change it, or is it gonna be, you know, the same product that we've seen before?
I'll say this: it feels like a lot of kids watched boxing and like want to be boxers after going through that whole card. And like I could say the same thing for UFC now. So to me, I see it as like whatever nets out the most creation of opportunities for guys to like get paid on the card. Like that to me is the best case scenario. So I think that can only happen with being funded at those levels at this point. But also just showing like the range of where where interest in these things is, and to me, it's universal.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, bro. And I mean, we got another UFC card, October 4th. We will be streaming live for that one. UFC 320, Ankalaev versus Pereira. We got Merab, Corey Sanhagen, Jiri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree. I mean, this thing's stacked, bro. Which actually, funny enough, I believe this is in Saudi Arabia. No, I'm sorry, it's in Las Vegas. I lied. But
UFC does have right now the hardest pronunciations in all major sports.
That's that's the one con.
And so many names sound different than they're spelled, where you're like, you know what I mean? It's not phonetic when you're trying to like pronounce one of the names on the card. And so it's talk about the universality, but also the biggest difficulty for commentators and announcers.
Like then you have a Russian fighting a Brazilian. You're like, all right, here we go. So I mean, that's kudos to those guys that always pronounce it like perfectly somehow. But yeah, man, thank you guys again for tuning in for another Combat Coffee Club, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.